Adelaide. Good morning, Steph in the lounge.
Good morning, Mark, in the kitchen.
How are
How are
you?
you?
How are you over the other side of the house?
I'm good. A little bit tired because we had a bit of a late night last night with some friends, but I'm okay. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. We'll see if we can get through this video. Should be all right.
It'll be fine. We'll be fine. My brain might not be like 100% switched on, but it's all right. We'll be good.
Well, it's 9 o'clock. We've had a little bit of a sleep in. We'll see how we go. Should I introduce the aminals from our
Yeah.
thumbnail?
Yeah. Who are the animals in our thumbnail today?
Audrey and Willow. Should I just read from the Freedom Hill
Yeah.
post? Just straight from the post. It's scorching hot out here today. So this was from 5 days ago. Audrey and Willow, our piggy princesses, are beating to heat the best way they know how, lounging poolside all day. Who else wishes they could join them? So yeah, it must have been a hot day. I think that was the 37 day maybe, or 35 day.
Yeah. 35 degrees Celsius. Yeah.
For our international viewers.
Yeah. And that is considered hot here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Audrey and Willow living more peaceful life at Freedom Hill Sanctuary.
Yeah. So they are to kind of tribute animals, I guess. Is that how do we define them? Like
What do you mean?
we're kind of doing this podcast on their behalf or something, or
Yeah, on the behalf of all animals. And yeah, I think it's just nice to when we have an animal in our thumbnail, they're actually an animal that they have names and they have personalities, and they're often the animals in our thumbnail are from Freedom Hill, which is a local animal sanctuary to us. So yeah. So today's you're right, it's a bit of a tribute. Today's episode is dedicated to Audrey and Willow, the two pigs at Freedom Hill.
yeah, dedicated. That's the word I was looking for. Maybe not tribute.
Yeah. So what's our topic today, Mark?
I've got crop deaths written down.
Crop deaths.
That
Yes.
old chestnut.
Crop deaths. Yes, we thought we had to make a video about this because this is the latest phase that non-vegans seem to be going through at the moment. It's the latest thing that they love to comment on, like every vegan post, and there's been a bit of talk about it in the media and stuff like that. It's kind of the latest thing that non-vegans think is their kind of like gotcha moment, right? They think that they can just mention crop deaths and oh no, that means vegans are hypocritical, and you know what non-vegans are doing is fine, and we're no different to them. Like I assume that's kind of the vibe that they're trying to go for when they mention crop deaths. It's just another way to maybe try and ease their cognitive dissonance about them not changing their behavior and them continuing to eat animals and exploit animals. So we thought we better make a video about it, seeing as it's the latest craze with non-vegans. And it's much easier, I think, to talk about it than to write comments, like trying to reply to people on social media, trying to explain why it's not really an argument that can invalidate veganism like they think it is.
Yeah, is this stream gonna be dedicated to the non-vegans, like directed at the non-vegans, or directed at vegans, or a bit of both, maybe?
Bit of both, bit of
See where it
both.
takes us.
I think anyone who's interested in animal rights or veganism, or if you're non-vegan and you think that you'd like to know more about this issue, or if you think that it is a valid argument against veganism, like I think anyone could benefit from watching this and just hearing our perspectives, I suppose, as
Yeah.
two long-term vegans who have thought a lot about animal rights and have lots of opinions about it.
Yeah.
So firstly, let's maybe explain what is meant by the term crop deaths. That's the kind of shortened term that we use for the argument, I suppose, that what is the argument? What is the argument that non-vegans are trying to make? I suppose my understanding is that when they mention this, they mean that when plants are grown, like crops, right? Plant crops that produce plant foods for us, whether it's corn or wheat or, grains or, I don't know, maybe
Strawberries.
other plantations. Yeah, strawberries, fruits, vegetables, whatever, any kind of plant crop. In the process of, I suppose, growing these crops, which require land clearance and tilling the land, harvesting the crops. So I guess that they're saying that in that process, animals can die as a result. So animals that maybe inhabited that land or that live in the ground or feed on the plants, that kind of thing. So it could be insects, it could be small rodents, apparently, maybe small reptiles, and that kind of thing. So basically, any animal that has somehow lived in that area where the crops are being grown, animals can die in that process of growing crops. Is that kind of how you understand it as well? So that's not
Yeah,
the
I mean
that's
the
not the
crux of
argument. Yeah,
yeah,
that's not the argument. That's just like the first part of like what they're saying. But then I guess the argument is
yeah.
that, or do you want to say what you think?
Well, yeah, I guess the argument is that veganism as a whole is pointless because of those deaths. Like it kind of undermines the vegan philosophy.
Yeah, that's what they think the argument that they're making
Yeah.
is that animals that die in the farming of crops, also known as crop deaths, invalidates veganism. They think, yeah, vegans, there's no point to it, or that vegans are hypocritical, or even some people have claimed that vegans kill more animals by being vegan, that kind of thing. So that's the argument that they're trying to make.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So we thought we'd address this issue with our own opinions and perspectives. We're not the type of people that, um, like maybe Earthling Ed and people like that who address these issues by doing heaps of research and trying to find statistics and studies and things like that try to prove our point of view. We tend to not do that. Firstly, because I think that these days you can kind of find anything that you want out there. Like if you look for a particular study that proves a certain point, you'll probably find it. Statistics, they can be unreliable and confusing, and there's issues there. But also, when we talk about animal rights and morality and philosophy, I think it's not always necessary to have to like back that up with statistics and studies, because we have a very clear view about what rights we think animals should have and why from a philosophical perspective. And I think that is kind of all you need to be able to look at this issue as a moral issue and decide what we think of it and what we think is moral and justified versus immoral and unjustified. So
Yeah.
that's why we don't tend to get bogged down in statistics and studies, because at the end of the day, it's more a conversation of how can you justify your position from a moral perspective. What do you
Yeah.
think, Mark?
Yeah, I think also from a practical point of view as well, because we talk to people in person, it's just not practical to start citing studies to people in like random people in the public. Like there's just so many like things that can go wrong. Like they don't know what you're talking about. You could be talking out of, that certain place that you shouldn't talk out of. Um, they might have studies that they know that you don't know. So it's like you're talking about two different things. They might not understand studies. They might just believe you, and then like it's not good for someone just to believe you, right?
Yeah.
It's just difficult to have statistical conversations, um, just ad hoc, I guess.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, that's right. So almost like what we're doing is more, would you call it like epistemology or
Yeah,
like logical reasoning and moral rationalizations and that kind of thing, like rather than relying on studies and statistics and stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if people are hell bent on disagreeing, they'll go away and find those studies, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
they'll find, as you said, they'll find something to back up their answer. So whether we give them a philosophical reason to go vegan or a moral reason to go vegan, they might go away and find statistics to try and debunk that. If we give them statistics to go vegan, they're going to try and look for statistics to not go vegan.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of value. And also, you get caught up in this like back and forth of like, I've seen this number, and then they're like, oh, well, I've seen this number. And then you have to
Yeah,
debunk. It just gets sticky.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Takes it away from the moral question as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's just who's got the more information.
So given that,
Can I just rant a little bit more though?
okay.
I think like from an advocacy point of view as well, I think a lot of like full-time activists have time to be doing this. Like a lot of YouTubers, a lot of like street outreach people, they have a lot of time to research this stuff. Like they're pretty smart. They're probably quite well educated. They have the resources. And I think they try and use that to their advantage, but I think it might put some people off activism because people look at those people and go, "Oh, they're so smart! Like I have to know all those statistics if I want to talk to people about veganism." And I
Mm,
have spoken to people that are not feeling confident to talk to people of the public because they've seen these figures. That's a double meaning. They see these high-profile vegans like parroting these statistics and think, oh, I don't know that, I don't know enough, or I couldn't remember all of that. Like I'm not worthy or something to be talking about veganism because I don't know what percentage of animals die in crop farming or you know.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's my gripe. I think it makes activism inaccessible to a lot of people.
Yeah. 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 Yep. I agree. So given
Rant
that,
over. We'll circle back to that.
so given that, let's share our epistemological approach to understanding crop deaths and the vegan perspective.
Well, should we
So,
break it down? Like, what's the definition of veganism or something?
oh, okay. Well, yeah. All right. Well, yes, that will come into it. So we defined the crop deaths thing. So yeah, the definition of veganism, I guess we tend to subscribe more to the Vegan Society's definition of veganism, which I guess is based on kind of the original definition of veganism, which is not just about trying to reduce harm and suffering to animals, although that is obviously a natural part of it, but it's also about rejecting the idea that animals, that we can exploit animals. So it's rejecting the exploitation of animals as well, which is kind of distinctive. So the exploitation of animals refers to the use of animals merely as resources the objectification of animals, the ownership of animals. So, the animal slavery, the ownership and property status of animals. Humans, we own animals as if they were just objects at our disposal, and we use them as resources, and that's exploitation. So
Yeah.
vegans reject the exploitation of animals, not just for food, but for any reason at all, whether it's to, use their leather, use their hides, for clothing, furniture, testing on animals for biomedical reasons or cosmetics or anything, keeping animals in captivity as pets in zoos, in labs, whatever have you. Basically, yeah, using animals. Vegans reject using animals as if the animals were just objects at our disposal, So the vegan philosophy is very much about recognizing the personhood of animals, and that they have that inherent value and that personhood just like we do. And, that means that they shouldn't be exploited by us. So the definition by the Vegan Society, it goes something like, I should know it off by heart,
You want me to read it out?
but
I'll cut it up.
veganism is a philosophy and a way of living that seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, the exploitation, all exploitation and cruelty to animals, or something like that.
Yeah, good enough.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not just about cruelty. It's not just about reducing harm. It's also about rejecting their exploitation. So, and Mark and I, we're abolitionists, which mean that we do believe that the ownership and the property status of animals is wrong, just like it's wrong for other humans. It's also wrong for other animals. So we're essentially against animal slavery, just like we're against human slavery, right? We don't think that sentient beings should be owned as property.
Yeah, and that debunks the other argument. Oh, why are you focusing on animal problems and not human problems? It's like, oh well, we also don't believe you should own humans. Like, I think that's quite consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2024. It's 2024. Can you believe that you can own somebody still? Like, unless you don't think that animals are like somebody's there, like, there's some personality, there's some individual. Like, I don't think that like people would be like intellectually honest to say that there wasn't someone there. So assuming that there is someone there, like we assume for people too, like you can own somebody, that just seems
Yeah.
ludicrous.
Slavery is still
Alive and well.
everywhere, In some parts of the world, human slavery, I think, is still a thing, which is horrible. But in all parts of the world, animal slavery is still a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, that's a little bit of a segue. But so the definition of veganism is also about exploitation of animals. So I guess how that relates to crop deaths is that, firstly, I want to say that I don't think any animal death is ever a good thing unless it's by their own choice, like, they're suffering and voluntary euthanasia and all that kind of thing. But when someone doesn't want to die, no animal death is a good thing, whether it's a lion killing a gazelle or a rodent dying in the process of harvesting crops, or a cow being slaughtered in a slaughterhouse. Like, none of those are good. No animal deaths are ever good for that animal. They didn't want to die and they died a horrible death. That's not good thing. So if it's the case that animals die in the process of growing and harvesting crops, I don't think that that's a good thing, first of all. Like, I think that, it's yeah, it's horrible that those animals are dying in that process. So I wouldn't ever try to like defend that. I wouldn't ever say it's a good thing. Um, However, I guess the next thing I'll say is that there is a difference between the exploitation of animals that vegans reject and um, the crop deaths, in the sense that the animals that we exploit and kill on a mass scale in an industrial way, right? We're breeding them into existence. We're keeping them captive, we're owning them, and we're using them for our own purposes. We're slaughtering them when we don't need to, right? As well. That's the other thing. Eating animals is unnecessary. We've been vegan. I've been vegan 13 years. You've been vegan 8 years. Like, we know that it's not necessary to eat animals. So, when people breed and kill animals, like in the animal agriculture industry, it's a different thing, I suppose, to animals being killed in the process of crop farming, just in the sense that the animals being bred and killed in the food industry are owned, they're being bred, like brought into this world to be killed. It's not kind of an incidental type of death. It's, they are being bred to be killed, and that whole process is completely unnecessary, right? So that's one point that I think is important to consider. So I think vegans obviously reject that whole process of exploiting, breeding animals to be killed, often unnecessarily. So, I still haven't heard anyone that talks about crop deaths. I still haven't heard any good justification for like it doesn't justify what we do to animals on farms and that kind of thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah. To kind of go back to your original point about no animal death is good, like we don't rejoice in crop deaths. I think that's kind of the straw man that non-vegans often use, because they redefine veganism to be vegans don't kill animals, or there's no deaths in vegan food. So it's a little bit of a straw man to redefine veganism in that way, because then you can say, oh, this ant died in the production of that orange, therefore it's not a vegan orange.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, how you define veganism is against exploitation,
Yeah,
which
that's
I
a really
think is
good point.
important to stick to the definition. And vegans get sucked into that as well. A lot of vegans do defend to the death that their food doesn't cause any harm or suffering, and I think that's not intellectually honest.
Yeah.
Like, it gets you into hedges you into a corner where you just can't get out of.
Yeah. Yeah. You put it so much better than I did. I feel like I'm struggling a little bit this morning to articulate myself. That's what a late night and a glass of
Alcohol.
alcohol will do.
That's why there's
But
two of us.
I'm really trying.
Can we
But
put our
yes,
heads together?
you articulated it really well, and that's exactly right. Veganism, it's not just about not killing any animal. Like, obviously, we would love a world where that was possible, and we should work towards that. And I think veganism is the only thing that is currently working towards that kind of world. Um, but it's not just about how many animals are killed. It's about, like you said, the philosophy of not exploiting animals, not seeing them as just objects and things for us to use however we see fit. We reject that. It's about rejecting that. So there's a lot more to it than just we don't want to kill anything or anyone.
Yeah, I'm pretty. If people bring it up to me in the public, I'm pretty like okay with them doing that, because I understand like why they would bring that up, because they care about animals, right? Like, that's a good platform to start with. assuming they're being honest and they're not
Well,
just using it as an excuse,
yeah,
most people do care about animals in some form or another. And if vegans are going around saying, no one died for my salad, or defending the point that no animals die in crop farming and just not being intellectually honest, like it's pretty forgivable for non-vegans to be like, hang on a second, and try and point out the contradictions, because I guess that's what we're doing, right? Is we're pointing out contradictions with non-vegans' philosophy and values and behavior. So it's
yeah,
only fair that it goes the other way. We just need vegans to be all on the same page and go, this is
yeah,
about exploitation. This is not about um, zero deaths. Like we can
yeah,
obviously work towards zero deaths, but that's not what veganism is.
yeah.
Like
So,
veganism. Sorry,
yeah.
go.
No, I was going to say, so if there are any vegans watching this, then we would say to you that um, don't try and make veganism look like it's just about not killing animals or it's just about kindness to animals, because that's not just what it is about. It is about not exploiting animals and, affording animals the right to not be owned and used exclusively as resources by humans. So yeah, I think that's an important distinction. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Veganism is about setting up the framework for animal rights, not having slavery. Then I think once you have that framework, once you can't own animals, you can't exploit animals, then I think welfare and like crop deaths and things then become more important, because now you have like a foundation to then work off of. But while we're killing animals on purpose, there's no way that
And unnecessarily.
unnecessarily, there's no way that any of these arguments hold any water,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, we can just do whatever we want. Like there's no incentive to avoid crop deaths or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Exactly. So I guess that maybe is the next point to make about this issue, is that, this is something that I often will say to non-vegans when they bring up crop deaths. I ask them, okay, so obviously crop deaths is a bad thing. I hate saying crop deaths because it sounds like the crop is dying, not that, like, anyway, I don't like that term, but I'll just use it because that's what everyone calls it. Anyway, crop deaths. What was I saying? Yeah, when I talk to non-vegans, when they mention crop deaths, one thing I'll often say is, okay, yeah, crop deaths are bad. I don't think the animals should die, like, wherever we can avoid it. So what kind of world do you think is most likely to be able to reduce or even eliminate crop deaths? A vegan world that actually gives a crap about animals, or a non-vegan world where we continue literally breeding and killing animals to eat when we don't even need to? So, like, what kind of world do you think is more likely to care about reducing those crop deaths or eliminating those crop deaths? So
Yeah.
that's one thing that I'll say. So yeah.
Yeah, if you think back to our previous video on, I think it was like pre-shift activism or something like that, you did exactly what we spoke about. You kind of agreed with what they were saying. So if they're saying crop deaths is bad, and then you agree with that, yes, crop deaths is bad, then you are having some kind of agreement, like agreeing on values and agreeing on terms. And then you're asking them a Socratic question, like, what kind of world or what kind of values do you think leads to us actually caring about these crop deaths in the first place,
Yeah.
or how you put it? I think that's
Yeah.
quite powerful.
Yeah.
Not to be defensive straight away. No, 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 no. My lettuce didn't cause any deaths. It's like you just can't have a
Yeah.
conversation like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, at the end of the day, if it is true that some animals do die in the farming of crops, it doesn't mean that we just throw our hands and be like, oh well, may as well just eat bacon then. Like it doesn't justify also exploiting animals. um, So there's a lot of fallacies there in that argument. The next kind of point to make on this issue is that I feel like a lot when non-vegans talk about this issue, a lot of them act like they don't also eat plants. Like they act like vegans are the only people that eat plants. Like no matter who you are, humans, we need plants to survive. Like I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't think it is physically possible to live completely just on meat or like animal products. I think like biologically as humans, we need to eat plants, right? No matter who you are, vegan or not. So, like I don't know. I've never heard of someone living their whole life purely eating meat. I don't think that's possible for humans because you wouldn't get a lot of the other nutrients you need, like vitamin C and like all these different vitamins and stuff. So anyway,
Well, yeah, it's difficult. Like sometimes you just have to assume that it's possible, or else then you kind of get stuck into those arguments where it's like he said, she said kind of thing.
maybe, but in this case, I think the fact is that humans do need plants. They do need to eat plants to survive. So,
Well, yeah, they do eat plants. Like it's not
well,
that they
yeah,
can't.
well, yeah,
It's not that they don't have to. It's like they do. There's no
true.
way there's someone out there that's never eaten a plant. Like
Yeah, okay.
it's just,
True. That's
it's
that's
just
probably
not.
a better
It's
way
just
of
not an
looking.
honest argument.
Yeah, that's probably a better way of looking at it, regardless of whether we need to or not. Everyone eats plants. Non-vegans eat plants just like vegans eat plants. So perhaps non-vegans eat slightly less plants than vegans do, but then they're also killing animals for their food. So it's kind of like, what should we do? Like we either um, eat plants and animal products, which means you're eating the plants, which is contributing to crop deaths, and you're also eating animal products, which is contributing to animal exploitation and death. So it's like either you're doing both of those things or you're just eating the plants, which is contributing to crop deaths, but not contributing to animal exploitation and, um, you know, death. So
Yeah.
it's like, I think either way, the diets, like the either of the two diets, non-vegan or vegan, both of them require eating plants. It's just one of them is also exploiting animals as well.
Yeah.
But also, just one more thing, a lot of the animals that produce the animal products that people eat, whether it's eggs, dairy, or meat, or other things, those animals are often fed grains, crops, so it's like you're growing the crops, killing animals in the process of growing those crops, and then you're feeding those crops to animals that you've bred to use for meat and eggs and dairy and things like that. And then you're killing those animals as well. So it's just like, to me, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, in which of those worlds are people more likely to try and be avoiding unnecessary deaths?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know. It doesn't seem logical to me to think that just because animals are killed in the process of growing plants, which like we need to eat something, right? Like
Yeah.
we need to eat plants to survive. That's just a fact, right? So we need to eat something. So um, you know, why eat plants and also exploit animals like who are also probably eating crops that
Yeah.
animals were killed for as well. Like it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And and to like I know we said we wouldn't get bogged down into statistics, but to be open with information, I suppose. Like I was just having a look at, you know, grass-fed animals. So like, you know, people often say, the animals are just eating grass and they don't eat any crops. In Australia, there's no like certification, like grass-fed certification, where people can't feed animals like crops to eat. So like they can often label label animals as grass-fed, but they might have fed them up on grains for like I think it's like up to 80 days or something like that. Like without having to change that certification kind of thing. So it's all a bit of a smoke and mirrors anyway. Like, to think that that's not going on would be a bit naive to think that people aren't trying to sell you product. That's cruelty-free cow, or like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it gets very complicated about like the certifications about how you can label animal products. And yeah, there are some regulations around it, but they're not transparent. And lots of people don't know about them. So even, like that example a few weeks ago that we were talking about with the sow stalls, the industry said that they will phase them out, but there's all these terms and conditions, and actually they're still allowed to use them, and there's no so it's just very misleading. So yeah, I'm not surprised that grass-fed animals are also fed grains as well. Like that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and another reason not to support like welfare reforms and things like that. Like it just undermines the vegans against exploitation, and it just says like, oh, this is a little bit better than that, like, well, if you are gonna exploit animals, you might as well exploit a grass-fed cow. It's just, yeah, it just gets too sticky and just messy. Like there's just no point.
Okay, so let's summarize our thoughts so far about the crop deaths thing. So firstly, we made the point that veganism, it's not just about trying to minimize deaths to animals. It's also about rejecting the exploitation of animals. So we believe that animals should not be treated as property and enslaved, right? So that eliminates using animals for food or for clothing or for any other reason, right? So that's one thing. The other point was that, I don't know, I feel like maybe I'm missing one, but the other point was around the fact that, well, what kind of world is most likely to lead to eliminating or at least reducing crop deaths? A vegan world that cares about animals and that, doesn't want animals to just be used frivolously, or the current world where people literally wear animals and turn them into handbags and don't really give a crap about them. So that was the next point. So that, yeah, maybe in a vegan world where people actually stopped using animals for frivolous reasons, then maybe we would invest more in trying to find alternatives, to crop farming that, or ways of crop farming that minimize animal deaths and minimize harm to animals.
Yeah, you would have vegan farmers, right? That are actively trying to come to a solution to this problem.
Yeah, like vegan crop farmers. Yeah. For a second, I thought you meant like vegan animal farmers. I don't know why I thought of that, but yeah, vegan crop farmers who actually try to be, as ethical as possible.
Yeah, because I don't think all the crop farmers are vegan, right? I think that would be pretty like low probability that all of the farmers that grow crops are miraculously vegan and just, assaulting rabbits in the field. Like,
yeah. And then the next point is around, well, yes, we do actually have to eat something to survive. We all need to eat plants to survive. It's not just vegans.
Let's eat something and not someone.
So yeah, so either you eat, like, I don't actually know, but it is possible that not like, not being vegan and eating plants and animals, plus, thinking about all the grains and crops that those animals are fed, that could still result in more animal deaths. I don't actually know. But yeah, we have to eat something. Let's eat plants. And then once everyone's kind of on the same page about that, about not exploiting animals and using them for unnecessary, frivolous reasons, then I think people will start looking more into ethical crop farming and how we can try and reduce animal deaths there. But yeah, we're certainly not going to address the issue of crop deaths in the current world we're in.
What's the point?
So if the people that bring up, the non-vegans that like to talk to us about crop deaths, it's like, well, okay, if you care about that, that's good. So do I. But we're not gonna, nothing's gonna be done about it while we're still in this non-vegan world that literally turns animals into handbags and, eats animals just because you like the taste of them.
Yeah, it draws parallels to like the pet industry and that, because like you can choose to exploit animals like in a cruel way. You could choose not to. Like I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to articulate exactly what's going on in my mind, but when you own animals, like you can choose to treat them how you want because they're your property. So to point to some way of farming that reduces suffering, say there is this like beautiful backyard farm, and very little animals are harmed, even less than a vegan farm. Let's just imagine that. Let's just assume that would be possible, and it probably is possible somewhere. That still leaves it up to the choice of the farmer because they own the animals. Like we're still leaving that up to chance that they have like morals and values for like that would protect those animals above their own interests, which is just ridiculous, because as soon as you own someone, then your interests come first. So like even where I'm drawing parallels to like the pet industry, it's like you can point to one person who looks after their pets to like a higher degree, but that doesn't mean that we should all be allowed to own animals. Like the ownership is the problem, even if someone does it nicely. And we can look at, the history of slavery and things. Like I'm sure there was some slaves that were treated nicely or like family or better than others, but pointing out those examples doesn't undermine the issues with exploitation in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Bit of a rant.
Yeah, I like how our conversation has gone back to anti-welfareism. It always seems to come back to that.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
If there's any non-vegans out there, I don't blame you. Like I get it. Like it's easy to get sucked in to the welfare argument.
Oh, you're saying you don't blame them because that's literally what some vegans are saying, that they're like,
I think the vegans started it.
welfare.
Yeah, I think vegans either got lazy and didn't think about exploitation as the problem, or didn't like look into it, or they weren't educated themselves on it, and it just kind of got passed down and watered down over the times that moved away from the exploitation as the problem to this throwing statistics and studies and like, oh well, if I can't convince this person now, then I'll concede to their ethics. Like it just I don't know. So I don't blame non-vegans for that, because they're just playing the game that vegans kind of started in that sense.
I like where this conversation has gone, because in terms of the actual like crop deaths arguments, like I don't even think I think we summed it up pretty quickly, and like there's not a lot to say about it because it's not a very well thought out argument from non-vegans. And
well, not if vegans are against exploitation.
Yeah, but
But if you
yes.
change the quest, like if you change what veganism is, then it gets
Yeah.
impossibly difficult to
Yeah.
untangle. Yeah.
I like where this conversation's gone because we're now talking about, okay, what are the reasons why non-vegans even think that they're giving some kind of argument by saying
Hmm.
crop deaths, you know? It's because vegans are partly responsible for making veganism look like it's just about doing no harm to animals or not killing animals, when really there's a lot more to it than that. Um, yeah, I like that. So yeah, I suppose we really want non-vegans to understand what veganism is, that it's a principle and a philosophy that first and foremost rejects the exploitation of animals, um, because you know it recognizes that you know we already reject exploitation of humans, and we know why that's wrong. We know why exploiting humans is wrong because we have inherent value, and owning someone means you're essentially just completely disregarding that inherent value. You're only giving them external value, you know, whatever value their owner wants to give them. So we know that that's why, um, you know, human slavery is wrong. And we're just saying it's exactly the same thing for animals. Animals have inherent value. I should say other animals or non-human animals because we are all animals.
I've noticed you say that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So that's what veganism is more about. So maybe if non-vegans understood that more, then they wouldn't have these crop deaths arguments. And also, yeah, I think you know another thing that vegans do that contributes to this idea that veganism is just about causing the least amount of deaths is that they say things like, oh, you know, if you go vegan, then you save 120 animals per year, right? So vegans love to say stuff like that.
Now this is your time to
Um,
rant. This
go
is your favorite
vegan.
topic.
Go vegan and you'll save 120 animals per year, you know. Um, and that's problematic. Like I do not say stuff like that anymore because um, it it's just not that simple. It's not okay. So, firstly, it's not about saving animals. We don't save animals by being vegan. All we're doing by being vegan is refraining from exploiting them. That's very different to saving them. You can't save someone that you literally were going to put in danger in the first place, you know. So,
It's like kidnapping someone and then answering the like reward poster ad thing. It's like, oh look, like
yeah.
I found this person in my basement. Like I deserve a reward.
Yeah. Or it's yeah, like or it's like a serial killer, you know, who used to kill, I don't know, 10 people per year on average. And then one day they kind of have an epiphany and they decide, oh, actually, you know, maybe that's not ethical. I think I'm going to not kill people anymore. And then they start saying, oh, I'm saving 10 people every year. How good am
Oh,
I? Like, you're not saving them when they were only in danger in the first place because of you, you know. So vegans
yeah.
aren't saving animals in that respect.
Sorry. Sorry,
They're just
vegans.
sorry, vegans, you're not saving animals. You're just you're doing the right thing still by refraining from putting them in danger in the first place, exploiting them in the first place, you know, and killing them.
Yeah.
But
If you really want to save an animal, like you're gonna have to break the law at this point. Like,
like taking them out of a farm
yeah.
to save them.
Like
Yeah,
you're
that
gonna
could
have to
be
risk
considered
jail if you
saving.
really want to save an animal. You're gonna have to risk jail. If you
Yeah.
want to save thousands of animals, like you're probably gonna have to go to jail.
Yeah, rescuing an animal in a way could be saving them, but again, they're still only here because we as humans have brought them here. So it's kind of like
Yeah,
we're still just rescuing them from ourselves, you know,
yeah,
as a
that's the
species.
gray area. Yeah, that's like I haven't spoken to a non-vegan about this, but I'd love to ask them like, oh, what do you think of like farm animal sanctuaries? Do you like those? Because the animals are there because of you, like to keep them safe from you.
Right. So you're saying if a non-vegan likes the idea of a sanctuary,
Yeah,
then it's kind of like, oh, but they're only there to save them from you, kind of
yeah,
thing.
to protect them from you.
Yeah.
Like every
Mm.
time you see like the cute, if every time you like the post of the cute cuddly lamb at the animal sanctuary, it's like that animal is there to be saved by you, to stop you from eating them.
To be saved from you. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's a bit funny. It's a bit weird, isn't it, to think
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, it's true. So anyway, yeah, back to reiterate that point that vegans need to stop saying stuff like, oh, vegans save 120 animals per year, or, vegan means that, you don't kill any animals, because that's not necessarily true. And it's more about, rejecting the property size of animals, rejecting exploitation of animals, and avoiding using animals as far as possible. That's more what it's about, rather than just a tally of, how many animal deaths, you're causing or not causing. So, yeah, vegans need to be careful about how they make veganism look to non-vegans. And I think, you're right. Vegans are partly responsible for the misconceptions that non-vegans have.
Be aware of what claims you're making. Yeah. Because I think there's a million reasons that you could try and use to get someone to go vegan, but let's be honest, most of them are pretty like fallacious or not very well thought out. They might be mostly like appeal to emotion or like things like that. So I think, if we just focused on the exploitation side of it, the values, exploitation, and the matching your behavior to that, like it's pretty straightforward. And this video would have gone for like 3 minutes tops.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We're kind of trying to undo the learning, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I hope that this video, maybe we can wrap up a little bit early today. I hope that this video has been helpful to whoever is watching it, and I hope we were able to articulate ourselves okay. I felt like it was a bit of a mess for me because, I don't know, I need to make sure on a Friday night before we do our streaming that I go to bed early and get in the right mindset. But anyway, I think we've made our points, hopefully clearly enough for people to understand. And if you're a vegan watching this, hopefully it kind of gives you a bit more perspective about, how you can think about this issue of crop deaths and how you can address it with non-vegans, and also about how you, make veganism out to be, to non-vegans. And hopefully it gets you thinking about, not furthering misconceptions about veganism, that it's just purely about reducing harm or how many animals are killed. Like it's not just about that. But like we said, obviously in a vegan world, like once everyone is vegan and stops killing animals unnecessarily, then we can make it more about, okay, now how do we try and reduce all animal deaths? Like so I guess essentially, because
rights must precede welfare.
Yeah, rights must precede welfare. So once animals have basic rights, not to just be exploited and used for whatever reasons, however we see fit, even if it's unnecessary, once that's gone, then we can look at, the like the animal deaths that are part of crop farming, which like eating plants is necessary. So at the moment, it's like we've got to eat something. Like we have to eat plants. Once we get rid of all the unnecessary animal exploitation when people go vegan, then we can hopefully further address this issue of crop deaths, because of course we don't want animals to die for any reason if it's unnecessary and if there's an alternative. So we can try and explore those alternatives to crop deaths. But I think that will only happen when people stop exploiting animals and using them however they see fit, even if it's unnecessary. So we've got to go vegan first. And if you're a non-vegan watching this, that's the summary to your crop deaths argument. We've got to have a vegan world first before the animals who die in crop farming even stand a chance, I think, because nothing's going to be done about those deaths in crop farming until people are vegan, till people stop exploiting animals and using them for frivolous reasons unnecessarily.
Yeah. And if you're vegan, you don't have to be like this high profile vegan activist that knows all these statistics to educate people about veganism. Just stick to the basics, the fundamentals. Do you remember that conversation last week? We were talking to that person. We're talking about the fundamentals is exploitation.
Yeah.
Let's focus on exploitation and not get pulled down this rabbit hole of trying to minimize suffering.
And look at, the statistics about what causes the least deaths and all that kind of thing. Because that's not the only thing to consider. It's not just what it's about. But yeah, I'm even if it was about that, like I'm not convinced that not being vegan causes less animal deaths anyway. I don't understand how they figure that.
I mean, I've never spoken to someone in person that is very attached to the crops death argument. Like, I think once you ask them a few questions, it kind of falls apart, and they know that it's a little bit fallacious, and they're not actually being honest, which is fine. Like, just reflecting that they don't really understand what the argument is. They don't really understand what veganism is.
Yeah. And just as a another thing I thought of, the other thing that I'll often, say to non-vegans that bring this up with me is I'll be like, like we said, firstly, agree. Okay, yeah, animals dying in crop farming is bad. I don't want that to happen. I don't like that happens. And then I'll say, what do you think I should do? I'm knowing that, I'm a person that cares a lot about animals, that I think animals have personhood, that they have inherent value, and I want what's in animals' best interest. What do you think I should do? What, like asking the non-vegans, like, and then that kind of gets them stuck, I think, sometimes, because they know that it just sounds silly to be like, you should just start eating animals again. Like,
if you exploit animals, you're going to save more animals.
Yeah, they have to try and make that point.
Okay, good luck.
And they can't make that point. So yeah, that's another way to do it. Throw it back on them, be like, okay, cool. If you care about the animals, the crop deaths, and I care about the crop deaths, what should we do? What actions how can we live to be behaving in animals' best interests, and see what they say.
Yeah, be interesting.
Yeah.
We'll try it. We're going to do activism next Saturday, I believe. What date will that be? Let me have a look at my calendar. The 17th.
I haven't come across so many people that mention crop deaths in person. It's a lot of it's a big like online thing, I think.
Yeah, because you can share an infographic or some BS. But also vegans do it online, that's why as well.
Maybe.
Like it's a bit of a two-way street. It's easy just to like say 74, I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air here, 74% of animals are killed in crop farming with snakes, rats, combine, corn. They're just like, you just say anything, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's funny how vegans are the only ones that eat soy, isn't it?
Apparently we're the only ones that eat soy. Yeah.
Animals eat more soy than humans.
No, remember, Mark, we're the only ones that eat plants, not just soy.
Oh, that's right,
we're the only ones that eat plants. We're the only ones that eat avocados. We're the only ones that eat avocados. We're the only ones that eat soy.
We're being a bit mean now. Vegan crops.
We're just being silly, but this is kind of the like mindset that like non-vegans approach it from.
We got to have a bit of a laugh sometimes.
Yeah.
So we don't.
Anyway, let's wrap up there because we don't want this to drag on too much.
I could go all day.
People
yeah.
are probably sick of hearing that our voices by now if they're at this point in the episode. All right, so our next stream will be next Saturday.
Did you want to do one on Wednesday as well, or just
Potentially
Saturday?
Wednesday night.
I really
yes.
want to talk about live export.
See, this is why people have to subscribe to our channel and get notifications, because then you'll know when our next stream is.
Because we don't know when our next stream is.
But
It'll
no,
either
it will-
be Wednesday.
It will either be Wednesday night, but it will definitely be next Saturday.
Yeah.
But it could be another surprise one on Wednesday night. We'll see.
Yeah, and I really can we do one on live export, please?
Okay, so we might be talking about live export in the next one. Then that's what Mark wants to talk about.
Maybe because we're still getting used to YouTube. Maybe we can ask like a question or something. Do you know how they have questions on YouTube? That's not a video; it's just like text, and then people can comment.
Yeah, we could try that. Sure.
I'll just say, I'm doing a video on live export. That's it. Like, you don't have to agree with it.
Sure. Go for your life.
Too bad.
Well, to anyone watching this, I hope it was somewhat helpful to you or interesting to you. If you want to let us know what you think, leave a comment. And if you want to, join in, be interactive with us on our live streams, feel free to tune in and drop a comment.
Yeah. See you next Saturday.
We'll see you next time.
9 a.m.
All
Sharp.
right.
Be there or be square.
Bye.